I am so excited to feature Stephanie Crowder today on Bare Naked Bravery. She has been a member of the Fizzle Co team for a couple years now, and I am an avid fan of theirs. They're so great. They helped me out when I was in my own state of what the hell's going on and in a really practical way. And you'll find out more about that in a little bit. But more importantly, to today's conversation, Stephanie recently started a gem of a podcast called Courage and Clarity. In fact, she interviewed me for it and recently published those episodes too. So go check those out in the iTunes Apple Podcast store and realm. Today, she and I talk about courage and clarity, because that's what she and I both live in the realms of. We could swim in that pool all day long. And we talk about how courage and clarity play on each other and balance each other out. And we also chat about how we can find that courage and clarity to do meaningful work in the world, unique to us. So today is really good. I know you'll enjoy hearing her own personal experiences and her learning curves, because she has a really interesting and really great perspective as a new mom and a working career gal who recently jumped ship to join a smaller team and to bravely carve a life and a work and career into the way she wants it to look. So towards the end of our chat today, Stephanie and I talk about this killer guide and workbook that she's pulled together for you for meaningful work. And the link for that and anything else we mention, the other episodes we talk about, are all in the show notes for this episode over at barenakedbravery.com. So go check that out if you're interested in anything we're talking about. I really love Steph, and I'm so glad to have her on the show today. I know you'll love her too. So let's jump on in and talk with Steph Crowder. You're listening to Bare Naked Bravery, a weekly podcast hosted by me, Emily Ann Peterson. As a singer-songwriter, author, teaching artist, and creative entrepreneur, I encounter some really fascinating stories. I'm on a mission to reveal the depth and width of bravery and its benefits to creatives like yourself. More than ever today, our world needs bravery, unique bravery, from everyone. This is the place where you find it. There is no script or censorship today, because that's how these facets of Bare Naked Bravery are in real life. So if you're listening with little ears nearby, please know that some episodes may contain mature language and subject matter. One of the easiest ways you can share bravery with the world is to send this episode to a friend or two. Send them an email, text, or tweet, tag them in one of my Instagram posts, my handle is Emily Ann Pete, or leave us a review on iTunes. It takes seconds and can be done from your phone right now. Again, we need more bravery in the world, so let's be brave together. I really am glad you're here, because I think you have a unique perspective to all the stuff that we talk about on the show, not only because of your own show, Courage and Clarity, but also because I know some of your history from years of listening to The Fizzle Show, which is another podcast. And so I'm just so glad you're here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm not kidding. I've been listening to The Fizzle Show for years, truly. And when I saw that you were creating your own little spin-off, would you call it a spin-off or its own thing?
Yeah, I guess it is a spin-off, or at least that's how it started. It's kind of starting to take on its own life, which is super exciting, but for sure a spin-off.
Awesome. I love everything that Fizzle does, because you guys you're taking people who are just now going into the realm of online business and basically giving them like stepstones for how to move forward. And it's sometimes really overwhelming when you're doing something that's really brand new or you know nothing about. So thank you for doing that. And then also, I think it leads really well into Courage and Clarity, which is what your show is about. So give me a little bit behind the like why courage and why clarity?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thank you for being a listener of Fizzle. That's so exciting. Yeah, I'm so excited about courage and clarity. So, like you said, we over at Fizzle.co is a platform that includes courses and community for creatives, freelancers, and entrepreneurs. And it was really born. Now, the two co-founders, Chase Reeves and Corbett Barr, have been at it for about 5 years. I joined a little over 2 years ago. And it really was born out of a place that I think is really aligned with the message of Bare Naked Bravery, which is cool, which is that business building can be honest and authentic, and we can just be who we are and not have to feel like we have to be some guru who is, coming up with like the most clickbaity headline. And, it's very easy to get engaged and trapped in this game of constant comparison, constantly trying to act like we are bigger than we are. And it's our experience that tells us that actually really doesn't feel like a cool, meaningful way to show up in the business world. And we believe there's another way, which is really where Fizzle comes from. It's about authentic business building, honesty. It's really real people building real businesses. And that's what I love so much about it. And I think that message carries over into courage and clarity, which is really, again, kind of born out of the experience that I have had in my own career, as well as now that I've had the privilege of coaching thousands of entrepreneurs at this point at Fizzle.co, which is that courage and clarity is a two-part equation to success, or to what I like to think of as meaningful work. So that is getting paid to actually do something you care about. Like, that's what we're all after, I think, right? Like, that would be the dream, is to actually give a damn about what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And I believe it takes courage and it takes clarity. You can't have one without the other. The courage part is the inspiration, the belief, the mindset, that you can actually do this. This is actually possible, that people have been in those dark moments, and from those dark moments came a turning point and success. However, empty inspiration just is hollow. It's like that aspirational kind of like, where is this all going? How do I apply it to my own life? And I noticed a lot of podcasts out there before I launched Courage and Clarity had this inspirational, aspirational quality, which is fine, except then you walk away from the conversation as a listener feeling kind of jacked up on it, but without a real implementation plan. So that's kind of an issue. But then on the other side, you have clarity. And clarity for me means strategy, tactics, tips, how-tos. Now, there are some outlets and podcasts out there that go real deep on just strategy. But again, the issue with that is strategy without being tethered to a vision, I think, is kind of the burnout model, because you can put in all the hustle and all the work and implement all the strategies. But when we're not in touch with why we're doing it, then I believe it's only a matter of time before it just feels like resistance and challenge, and we might give up. So to me, the courage and the clarity, they balance each other out. They play together really well. And it's kind of like the yin and yang of business building, I think.
Yeah. And this week, my interview on your show, you interviewed me for your show, is live this week too. And one of the things I love about your show is that there are 2 episodes every week with the same interviewee.
Right.
And the first episode is all about courage, and the second episode is all about clarity, with like something tangible, like a to-do, like a now what?
Exactly. That's the goal.
So powerful, because I think a lot of times, especially, courage is a synonym, like a direct synonym with bravery. So
right.
I know, and I see this all the time, that people who are facing a brave thing, there's often this like overwhelm that comes after they recognize that they need to do something brave, because it's like, wait, what do I do next?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's so true. And it's like and what I noticed too is, like, I use the words like jacked up, like you get all jacked up on the excitement of it. And the thing is, like, and this is usually where we receive customers. They come to us and they're like, I'm so excited. I have this cool idea. I'm going to quit my job. It's going to be amazing. And I'm always excited for them, of course, but I've been at this long enough to know that like that shine is going to fade and reality is going to set in. You're going to be like, oh, wait, there's a lot of work to do. So without knowing the steps, you can't just ride the courage alone. I have not found that to be the case.
Which, as a marketing consultant, I see this all the time, that business owners who, like wake up one day and go, oh, wait, I own a business already. Those are usually the more successful ones because they've slowly grown into it, as opposed to going, the world is my oyster. I choose you. You're just diving right in. It's so much more sustainable to have that long tail of a growth into your business or into your new thing or into the courage or into the scary realm.
Right.
You're probably more likely to survive it if you go into it slowly.
I think so. I've seen that to be true as well. That sort of all of a sudden you kind of accidentally have a business, and that's tricky because for people who don't come into it that way, it's like, how do we replicate that? Which is hard. But I think that what I have seen or what I've observed is that those people who kind of accidentally ended up with a business, they just have a little bit more clarity because they've taken the steps to see what it takes to do the work. And so they have a little bit of a clearer vision in terms of what needs to keep happening. Whereas when you're starting from the very beginning, you're like, what's my first step? So it's really interesting.
Right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the clarity aspect of courage, because I think it's so, how do I say this? I have seen that those who are the most brave, according to my definitions of bravery and courage, those who are the most courageous are actually the most analytical. And their choice to execute something involves a lot of forethought. So it's not just a willy-nilly, like, spin the wheel of bravery and whatever it lands on you have to do. It's okay, I'm looking at all of the issues here. I'm looking at all of the ingredients and all of the environmental factors in either my business or my piece of art or the song that I'm writing. There's so many variables that are in consideration when you're executing in on courage. And I think that's part of the clarity that I see. What do you think?
I agree. I do agree. I think that it's interesting that you say that you found that people who are more analytical tend to be able, maybe it's that they're able to act on the courage a little bit better because they know what to do. I think that that's one of the big things I see when I consider this clarity part is the questions that I get in the sort of like, if I look at the clarity aspect, the big questions I get are, how do I beat overwhelm? How do I put this into practice? What are the steps? There's like this paralysis that is really pervasive with people who are trying to act when they have, even if they have the courage, it's this question of like, well, what am I going to do next? And I think that not having a clear path to understanding, like, what I have seen to be honestly I was going to say the magic bullet, but there's really nothing magic about it. It's understanding that success is found in the day to day or week to week. That is one of the big mantras we have over at Fizzle, which is that make progress every single week. End of story. Like week after week, that's where the progress is. And I think sometimes when we're not as analytical about it, when we don't consider and break down the steps of what needs to be done, all we know is that we want the end result, whether it's losing 50 pounds or launching a business. Now, there's many, many steps between where we are now and losing 50 pounds or where we are now and quitting our jobs to have a business. So when you don't break down those steps, it becomes this big, overwhelming thing and you risk never getting started. So that's really where I see the breakdown in the clarity is not understanding what is my roadmap to success? Like what's actual steps do I need to take? How do I block out all of the steps in the future and just focus on the one in front of me? I have found that people who achieve their goals are really just focused on the week in and week out progress that gets them towards that end goal.
Yep, you're spot on. So give me some personal examples from your career or your experiences with courage and clarity. I'm curious to see or to hear kind of what your personal experience has been with this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's absolutely been a winding road for sure. I had the experience of having a very successful, more traditional career. And this is going to be interesting. I've never gotten the chance to talk about it in the context of, I think people listening will resonate because I achieved success early in my life and still felt like something wasn't quite right. And that was such a disheartening feeling. So I was really lucky in that I live in Chicago and I joined this, at the time, baby tech company called Groupon. You may have heard of it. Yes. However, when I started in 2010, nobody had heard of it. It was a Chicago-based company. It was like this website that was new and people were getting deals emailed to them only in our area. And I went over there as a sales rep. I was just out of college and I didn't know what I was doing. This was pretty much my first big girl job. And I was able to achieve, I tell people that I had a seat on a rocket ship and I had no idea at the time. When I started there, I was employee 400 something, like early in the 400s. By the time I left 5 years later, there were over 10,000 employees worldwide. It was insane. And it was just such a cool thing to be a part of. And I just think it was like a typical career on speed because it was Forbes magazine called it the fastest growing startup in history back in 2010. And so I got to be a part of that. And as such, I believe I had career opportunities very early that would have taken otherwise maybe a few decades to achieve. By the time I left Groupon, I was a director of a department. I headed up our sales training department, which was a department that I built and didn't exist when I got there. And I left and I had 30 employees under me. And I had started it just like a little sales rep. And I just got good at sales. Then I started training people. And then I built a team under me. And I took over for my successor, who was the person who mentored me. And I was 26 by this time, making a great salary. I had trust. I had freedom. Really, I had to go into an office, which was never my favorite thing to do. But for the most part, I had some great perks. And this career was very good to me. And yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing or almost this feeling of is this it? Why do I feel like I don't quite belong here? That feeling totally found me. And at the same time, I started listening to podcasts and I started hearing stories of other people who had managed to make a living from their creative projects and live life on their own terms. And this term lifestyle business was introduced to me. And I couldn't get it out of my head. It blew my mind. I, at the time, was newly married and I knew that children were hopefully going to be in my future. And I couldn't reconcile the fact that I had this high-powered career that I really did enjoy, but I had this other side of me that wanted to be immersed in family life. And I couldn't work out in my brain how that was going to work. And it scared me to death because I didn't want to have to choose. Meanwhile, I'm hearing stories on podcasts of people who were building, this is when digital nomadism was becoming big. People were talking about passive income, all these new buzzwords I was hearing. And I got sucked in and I was like, how can I make this work in my own life? So once I had the idea that I was going to be one of these people that I was listening to on podcasts, I couldn't get it out of my mind. And it was around this time that I discovered Fizzle. So as I mentioned, the co-founders of Fizzle started about 5 years ago, and they had the Fizzle show back then. It's been running for 3 years at this point. And I just knew, just listening to them talk on the microphone, I knew I wanted to be part of what they were building. And I had to figure out how to get myself involved. And my big courage moment was they, lo and behold, one day posted a job for a part-time customer service person. And here I was a director of a department, at a tech company. And I put my name in the hat. I found out later that they basically threw my resume out because I thought it was a joke because I was so overqualified. But I just knew that if I could get a foot in the door, I just kind of felt this connection that these were my people, that maybe I could, really make a difference with this team. And luckily that's what happened. I did take about a 60% pay cut to go work with them initially because I had to help grow the company in order to, earn my salary back.
Right.
But I knew that, first of all, this decision was something that I could take back if I needed to. If the worst thing happened, I could go back out and get another job. I left on great terms in my previous company, but it was still scary. It was terrifying. It was terrifying to have to find in me the courage to believe in what I wanted to do enough to leave behind things like ego, things like financial prowess, the approval of my dad, who I love to death, but always kind of valued more of like a traditional career like this. And was kind of like, what are you doing? You're going to go work on the internet with these dudes that you met online? Like, what is this? So for me, that's really where the courage came from. And clarity, sometimes I feel that clarity is something that you have to, it's like the parachute that you build on the way down. You know, it's like you jump and you have to figure out how am I going to make this thing fly? So I think it's this balance of striking in your window of bravery and your window of courage before, because I do believe that window will close if you sit on it for too long, but making sure that you have enough of the steps ahead of you. You might not see the whole staircase, but knowing enough of the steps to just take that next one and just trust that you'll be able to take the step after that. That's kind of how it's played out in my own life, and letting it unfold has really proven to be, I don't know, very instrumental in getting myself at least as far as I've gotten so far.
We interviewed Holly Margell, who's a photographer and a wonderful human being. Her episode, we talked a little bit about how she decided to become a photographer, especially the type of photographer she picked, because of her values on, like, she values having enough time and space to celebrate life. And she wants to celebrate her family's life. So she built a business around that, which also celebrates life with her clients. And so it's really fascinating to see these like really fulfilled creatives and career people and trace it back to the fact that they've built their business and they've taken the brave steps, not because the thing was brave and because they wanted to be a hero, but because they believed in the meaning behind it, and they really valued the thing that supported or prompted these brave acts or feats or careers or choices or whatever. So it's so cool to hear that story from your perspective as well. It's really neat.
Yeah. And, it's interesting that you mentioned values. Something I've been exploring over on the Courage and Clarity podcast is this idea of what you're talking about, which to me, the words I use to describe that are meaningful work. Meaningful work looks like caring about what you're doing and not living your life in the margins. I think we're taught to save up for retirement and life starts when you're retired, or, just save up for that vacation that you get to take maybe once or twice a year. So instead, it's like, how do we have work that's meaningful, that we care about? And I've been thinking about this concept of the DNA of meaningful work. And what that means to me is, like, if we were to look at meaningful work under a microscope and like break it down on a molecular level, what would we find? And I've been thinking of it in 4 parts. I would love to share that with you if you want to hear about it.
Oh my gosh, bring it.
So for me, the DNA of meaningful work, I believe, is broken down into 4 parts. And the first one is what you already mentioned, which is values. So the first piece of DNA of meaningful work is values. So that's questions like, what do you care about in life? How do you want to be spending your days? Simply put, what's important to you? Is it time with family? Is it travel? Is it making an impact or furthering a cause? Living a simpler life, reducing stress, feeling fit and healthy? We have to identify what we really care about and how we want to be spending our days. Like that, I think, is the first piece, is that values thing. Is like, what matters to me? For some people, financial stuff is everything. For other people, it's family life. So understanding what is truly important to you is the first piece of the DNA, which is, again, values. The second one is really interesting, environment. So environment, I had a conversation with 2 amazing women, Rachel and Kristen, of a website called Clarity on Fire. They do career coaching. We had this big conversation about environment and how context matters as much as content, which is, I think we miss this one a lot, because we think about living your passion and doing your dream job, and we all think about the subject matter. Am I doing art, or am I playing music, or am I getting to do the stuff I care about? But context matters a lot too. So that comes down to the environment. Some people really love being able to work independently from anywhere in the world. Other people, not so much. Other people really thrive on being with people face to face. And in fact, not being in the mix with other people would depress them. So understanding your environment, because that context really matters. Then the next thing is interest. So interest is literally what is interesting to you. What topics could you talk about all day long where it doesn't even feel like work? What is like your craft? People say if you're at a party, you could just go on and on about it. That's your interest. And then the fourth thing is expertise. So this is where we ask ourselves, what comes easily to us? What are people always telling us we're good at? What are people always coming to us for advice about? What are the things that we do that make us feel like, man, I'm really good at this? So it's like this weird four-way Venn diagram that I've been thinking about, where it's the intersection of values, environment, interest, and expertise. And where those four things come together, I believe that's what makes up this whole meaningful work thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, fantastic. It's no secret that I offer mentorship to creatives, entrepreneurs, and other folks looking to build their bravery. But when a business owner is simply in need of some really straightforward training and camaraderie, I send them to the guys at Fizzle. Fizzle is an online membership site which helps entrepreneurs grow their business, revenue, and fulfillment until they're crackling with creativity, impact, potential, and purpose. Now, there are two definitions of the word fizzle. Did you know? The first is to fail in a weak and disappointing way, which is actually what most businesses end up doing. But the second definition is to buzz or crackle like an exposed electrical wire. And you know what? You wouldn't hear all that buzzing or crackling and fizzling if there weren't an intense amount of energy or potential in those wires. The Fizzle community exists because, number one, it's hard to build a good online business. Most ideas fizzle out. And number two, for the entrepreneurial type like myself, there's a lot of energy and potential running through the wires. Everyone inside Fizzle is putting their butt on the line to build something they care about. And when you own a business, it's natural to hit roadblocks, lose steam, search for direction. But Fizzle helps its members get clarity and take the very next step. They've got some really excellent courses from real experts and a community of like-minded business builders. The courses all focus on concrete, actionable steps. The community is incredible, and there's no smarmy tactics or marketing schemes, just real people building honest websites, products, and services. If you've ever worked on a project alone, you know how much of a game changer an active community makes. It's easy to join Fizzle. Your first 2 weeks are free. After that, if you choose to stick with it, membership is only $35 a month. Visit barenakedbravery.com/fizzle to get started. That's FIZZLE. I agree that it's that four-way diagram. There's, for me personally, the overlap of those four things has changed and morphed over the course of my career based on, I moved, so my context is different, or right. I have 10 roommates instead of one, or those daily environmental shifts change. Yes. Your interests change. I mean, my interests change the days of the week. So
totally.
So it's important for me to have work that is so varied and encompasses a lot of different skills. Mm-hmm. And as I have been in a bunch of different skills, my expertise has also changed as well. So I think it's really fascinating to see that if I had a map of the overlap and how the overlap of these four things has changed over the course of my career, it would be a really funny map.
Well, and that's so true. But you know what else is great about it, I think? So something you just said really resonates with me, which is that my interests change as many days as there are in the week. And what I love about mapping it this way is it makes us a little bit less susceptible to just blowing up our lives every time we get a new idea. Because I think as creatives, I know I struggle with that, where I'm like, well, maybe I should be doing this thing because that's interesting all of a sudden. But if we're weighing it against our other three, think of them as all little anchors, then we can make more informed decisions and we can have that clarity once again, because it's not just about the changing winds of our interests. We also have to weigh it against, the value. Does this satisfy my values? Is this the right environment for how I like to work? And am I going to be able to use the skills that I'm good at? So it's kind of like if we tick all four of those boxes, then that's probably a good indication that that's a good direction to move in. But I almost see this as like, it's like a Ouija board. Like it kind of moves itself, but it makes us a little bit less, I don't know, vulnerable to the swinging of our interests, which I think that all of us feel. Like you said, if not daily, then like sometimes hourly. Like at 1 hour, I'm interested in this. And then, oh, well, over here, I'd rather be doing that. So for me, it's helped me be a bit more grounded.
Yeah, I'm full on that. We interviewed Emily Wapnick a couple weeks ago, and she is, first of all, she's amazing. She just wrote this book, How to Be Everything. And she has this wonderful TED Talk all about multi-potentiality, and so fantastic. And she would totally dig on these 4 things. I know she would.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So if you're interested, go back and listen to that episode, because she's got some good things to say on that. And I've heard back from a couple of our podcast listeners who I've like snuck hints like, hey, you should buy this book ahead of time, because being a creative means that you are interested in a lot of things. That's just kind of natural to like a natural thing. And you're right. We do, the wind changes. And then before you know it, we've like uprooted our whole lives to go, or like fired a client on a whim because we decided, oh my gosh, they aren't the thing that I should be focusing on right now. And I can't deal with this, but I think I wonder what this meaningful work would do if we applied it to work with clients or an individual piece that we're working on as an artist, or fill in the blank, because I think it could be very applicable to like, okay, this hour.
Yeah.
What my interests have changed, but based on the environment and values and expertise I have, what should I really be doing?
Exactly. It's giving us a bit more of a concrete criteria for making decisions in our work. And I think you could absolutely apply it. That's really a great application of this, I think, is thinking through when we want to make a shift, running it through these kind of checkpoints is really helpful to make sure, like, is this an intentional shift, or am I, kind of just feeling this way right now because it's an emotional thing, or whatever the case may be. So it's great in that instance. Another instance it's great for is just kind of like fight. I think we live and I'm very fascinated by this, but I think we live in this culture where a lot of people are living by default, where they're just kind of like, at least for me, I had a traditional upbringing, and it's nothing that anybody did. It's just the way that I think our society is structured with, you go to college, you get a degree, you get a job, and that's kind of it. And we're kind of in this pattern of just drifting. It's very easy to start drifting. And all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, what have I done? And then what have I done with my time? So This is, to me, a way to take back some power, because that's one of the things I hear from people who want to make a change. They want to build a career that features meaningful work, but they're like, I don't know how to be in control. I don't know how to be in the driver's seat. I've only ever been a salesperson. I don't know how to be anything else. And it's like, well, if you can start by making a list and just throwing some ideas into each of these 4 categories, well, that's when you can start to feel like you can make an intentional shift versus that really horrible feeling that I have experienced of that aimless kind of drifting, feeling like a product of your circumstances and like what opportunities come your way, versus I think this gives us an opportunity to create opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And I see another use of these 4 things, which is when you are facing something brave and you tend to err on the flight side of the fight or flight spectrum, then asking yourself or walking yourself through these 4 things is probably going to be really beneficial. Like, okay, this thing I'm about ready to do or feeling called to do is I'm scared and terrified of it. What do I really care about? What is my environment telling me to do? What are my interests asking me to do? And what are my skills? And sometimes going through these 4 things, I know I've done it myself, that reminding me of those 4 things empowers me to move forward with the scary thing and not just run, even if the running is intentional.
Absolutely. And I'll give a great example of this. So I already mentioned the 2 ladies I had on my show where this environment piece is the final puzzle piece that clicked in for me, and they helped me with that. And I believe it was Kristen Walker of Clarity on Fire was telling this story of she was in her, rewind to her past. She had a really cushy job. I believe it was in like copywriting and maybe in an agency. And she was talking about how this job should have been her dream job. I mean, all the perks, like valet service. I mean, really kind of like glitz and glam. Even the content of the work was what she wanted. She wanted to be doing the actual work that she was doing. And she was miserable and she couldn't figure out why, to the point where she actually felt broken. She was like, what is wrong with me? Am I just destined to hate working? Am I not ambitious? Do I lack drive? All these big questions came up for her. And it's only now in hindsight in the conversation, it really dawned on me that it was the environment piece for her. She is not someone who does well in a kind of cubicle environment. She's not someone who necessarily gets energy from the kind of like tight knit group work. She's an introverted person. So for her, the environment was off and it made her feel miserable. So it's really fascinating when you find somebody who is in a position where they feel like they should love it. Like this word should comes in, where it's like the job, the stuff I'm working on is my passion. And all the perks are there. Like her expertise was being used, her values were being met. So what was wrong? Well, even if just one part of this equation is off, it might create this underlying feeling of like, ugh, this is wrong. So it helps us understand, if we can, again, run everything we're doing through these filters, you might feel a little bit less like, what the heck is wrong with me? And instead able to diagnose, like, I just need to make a tweak. In Kristen's case, she needed to work for herself and now she's totally happy. So it's really, I think, a nice way to diagnose what in the world is going on if we need that kind of like, I don't know, just checking in with ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, this is good. This is really good. So let's talk a little bit about, because I know that I'm going to totally shift gears here for a sec. Your mom, right?
My mom?
Yeah, you are a mom.
Oh, I'm a mom. I'm sorry. I thought you said your mom. I was like, my mom. Yes. Yes, I am a mom. Yes, I'm sorry. I have a 14-month-old baby girl. Yes.
So let me ask you this. In regards to these 4 things, I love the fact that immediately all the mom jokes, like the your mom jokes just came to me.
Yeah,
I was
your
like,
mom.
So now I'm having to like go get out of my brain. Okay. So as a mom, or as a new mom, I'm sure, I can only imagine that you encountered some courage and clarity moments in even just being pregnant, or choosing to become a mom, or choosing to structure your life differently, in all of that. What parts of these 4 DNA have you seen come up in this like new mom journey?
Oh man, what a good question. And I haven't actually thought of it this way. So I'm excited to dig into this. So my gut instinct, right away, what comes up for me is all of them. And for anyone who's listening, who's gone through the journey to motherhood, I think it hits you everywhere. The one that comes up right away is environment, because the journey of being pregnant, I mean, if our body is like our home, all of a sudden your home is totally like turned upside down. You don't feel all this kind of crazy stuff's going on in your body. You're tired or sick or feeling the effects of hormones, like just all of a sudden you feel like a stranger in your own skin. And actually that I think the reason that's the first thing that comes up for me is because, as far as in the context of work, I was really challenged suddenly by my environment, because I am a very naturally driven person. In fact, I'm someone who struggles to turn off my work. And all of a sudden I was so tired and physically sometimes unable to bring the force that I like to bring to my work. And that really challenged my identity. So learning to work with my energy instead of fighting against what my body was trying to do, really seeing myself as like having another job, which was like, growing a human, was definitely a big challenge to who I was, because I had never, of course, been in that role before. So the environment was really big. Of course, it changed my values, because all of a sudden I had to envision myself as not just the career woman, or not just a wife and friend and daughter and all these other roles, but I was about to take on a brand new role, and figuring out how does this new life that, of course, I very much value, how does that fit into the work that I want to bring to this world? Because I don't want to give up my work, but I also think that there's no greater job than molding my daughter's life. So certainly challenge my values. Interests definitely changed in terms of suddenly I never thought I would be interested in learning about different kinds of parenting and how to, again, in the context of work, suddenly I had this new motivation to model what meaningful work could look like for my daughter, because to have that example in your life of, hey, because I've been thinking about this too. We tell our kids, you can be anything, you can do anything. But how many of us watched our parents or role models then say that out of one corner of their mouth, and then at the other corner, they're talking about how they hate their job or going to a job they hate. So I remember that never making sense to me as a kid, where it was like, go after your dreams, be whoever you want to be. But then some role models I had didn't like the work they were doing. It was always very confusing to me. So suddenly now my interest is like, okay, how do I really like walk my talk here and model? Like if I'm going to talk about going after what you love, I better darn well be doing that. And then expertise, of course, like, oh man, well, that's, I think, where the learning curve comes in, where when I first started as a mom, I had no expertise. I didn't know what in the world I was doing. Maternity, like taking some time off for maternity, was a big challenge for me because, again, I always saw myself as like super hard worker and work till the job is done. And suddenly my job was to just keep this fetus living outside my body alive for another day until my husband got home. And sometimes that's all I did. Sometimes that's all I did in a day. And I was like, what is this? And I had to start seeing that as, I don't know, I had to start seeing that as work in and of itself, meaningful work in and of itself. So I think that something like parenthood, like a big life shift where you take on a whole new identity, like all of these filters come into play and teach you that work is not, at least for me, I learned that work is not just what you do from 9 to 5 to make your living. Meaningful work, it also can happen and manifest itself in other roles, such as parenthood or friendship or marital relationships, whatever the case may be. But yeah, I mean, I think certainly very interesting to consider how all 4 of these play into a major change like that. I kind of wish I had this framework before I had turned into a mom, because sorting out like who I was after that was really, really hard. And I think it did require a lot of bravery to just keep showing up and give myself permission to learn through the process. It's certainly a giant learning curve.
As you're talking, I see this, I don't know if you wear glasses. I do. But when you go to the eye doctor and they put that big honkin' like raccoon mask thing on your face, and then they like flick through all the little lenses to figure out which prescription is yours, that feeling of like left or right, right or left?
Yes.
Right. That is what these 4 things do, because you're like, everything is totally blurry. You think you want to go in one direction, but then like you ask yourself, what are my values? Oh, this. Boom. Mm-hmm. Everything gets a wee bit, like a tiny more clearer. What's my environment telling me? Boom. A little clearer. What's my interest telling me? Boom. A little clearer. What is my expertise? What do I have to offer this situation? Boom, clear, and there's your next step.
Yes, I love that. That's a great analogy, because you're right. Without that crazy mask that helps them determine what our prescription is, you might as well just like pull a pair of glasses out of a box and hope that it's your prescription. I think that's what a lot of us do with career. It's like, oh, well, that one's my best guess. Like, I'll go with that one. And we're not taught a framework or a vision test for figuring out what we should be doing. So I think that is like so insightful to look at it that way.
Yeah, I'm just a visual thinker. And so
me too.
I always see these metaphors with things that we're talking about, but that's exactly how I see this, and asking yourself any sort of analytical question before you jump into doing something brave is that little bit of, that gives you that extra bit of clarity to realize, oh, I should be wearing hiking shoes, not flip-flops today.
Right. So yeah. And you know what's cool about that too, just to carry that analogy even further, because I love myself a good analogy for learning as well. Once you do that vision test, they give you your glasses, you can see, hallelujah, it's great. That's it. You got to go back next year, right? Like, right. And oftentimes your prescriptions changed, and that's normal. Like, they just tell you, hey, that's what happened. So it's not like you go through that vision test and you're set for life. So that is, and like you said, with how you've seen this change and evolve over time, I think that's completely true. As time goes on as well, we've got to continue to check in with this stuff, because we are going to grow and change. It's kind of part of our experience.
Yeah. Ugh. This has been so fantastic. I'm so stoked. Now I'm all jacked up. But I really feel like I feel really good about knowing that you can always come back to values, environment, interests, expertise, and know where you should take the next step. So this is so great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. This has been so fun to talk about. And yeah, I'm just excited for people to hopefully apply this in their own lives. It's been really, really helpful for me, and I hope it's helpful for you guys too.
Totally. So you are working on a series of episodes and a workbook and a kind of this guide for meaningful work. And we will have a link for that in our show notes. So I'm so excited to offer that to everyone because I think this is really powerful stuff. I think we all need to go get our quote unquote eyes checked from time to time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And absolutely. And just for people to know too, in this workbook, this meaningful work guide, the DNA of meaningful work that we talked about is just one little puzzle piece. So I'd love for you guys to check it out. I have many more thoughts. And this is like I'm kind of learning out loud, and it's been really fun to do that. So yeah, come on and explore it with me.
Awesome. Well, we will have you back. I know we will. So thank you again for being here. It's been so great.
Thank you. I had so much fun.
I loved Steph. I love her, and I'm so excited to have her on the show again in the future. In the meantime, though, your brave takeaway beyond your bravery bundle, which is always for free and has all sorts of goodies in it, your brave takeaway from today's show is to hop into the Bare Naked Bravery Facebook group and tell us a couple favorite ways you find clarity in your life. Is it reading a certain book? Is it talking to a certain person? Is it asking yourself a series of questions like the ones Steph mentioned? If you are not a member of the Bare Naked Bravery community yet via our Facebook, you can do so by downloading the Bravery Bundle, wink, wink, which will automatically send you a link to join the group. We would love to hear all about your favorite parts of today's Bare Naked Bravery, and that's a great way to do it. So I and Steph would love to hear about your favorite parts specifically, so you can reach out to both of us either on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email, whatever. Just go ahead and tag us if you do so publicly so that she and I can see it and cheer you on and all that good stuff. So again, all of the links that we talked about in the show, the other episodes that we mentioned, and Steph's podcast and the workbook and the guide on meaningful work that she mentioned, those links are all in the show notes over at barenakedbravery.com. And just type in Crowder, Crowder, and her beautiful face and pink shirt will pop right up. And with that is our show this week. I want to thank you so much for listening because we have put a lot of stuff, a lot of emotional and mental and all the juice of our lives go into this. My team and Steph's team and myself, we put a lot into this, and all of the other guests that we mention and talk about on the podcast, their bravery deserves to be spread so far and so wide, and that is your role. So the ball's in your court. If you have somebody who might enjoy this conversation or some of the other ones that we've had on the show, go ahead and share the show with them. You can text it to them pretty easy. You can tag them in a Facebook post, but some of these stories really need to be shared with your people, and now that's your job. That is part of the beautiful part about bravery, is that it is a ripple effect, a resonant effect of things, and I love that. So if you're digging the music in today's episode, that's because it's brought to you by Lee Rosevere. To find out more about him and all the other artists, musicians, and other sponsors of the show, just go visit Bare Naked Bravery and you can just have at it. Dive on in and have at it. I am so looking forward to being with you next time. There's some awesome things coming your way. Until then, though, I just want you to know that it's okay to be yourself. It's okay to be vulnerable, to be brave, because the world needs more of your bare naked bravery.